So why we're here today? Because as introduced, we're going to discuss about innovation and AI in clinical development and operation. These are where basically I'm working as innovation strategist there. Before starting, just I would like to know you a little bit more. Who's from business? Raise your hand. So, who's from IT? Pharma? Okay, and hospitals and so on? Providers? Good, thank you. Quick question to you. Do you think that AI is gonna be part of your daily life in the next years? Okay, you think so? Okay, I believe that yes. I mean, at least we've got an Alexa at home, so probably it's gonna be something. Okay, so let's see actually what's happening in clinical trials and operation. I just want to report you this stuff. It's basically called the hype cycle of clinical development and operation by Gartner. And if we see, actually in the last 3 years, we have seen that technologies, and most importantly, basically AI, are basically playing a huge role. So basically, not me, so not Roberta Pandolfi, but Gartner says that basically AI, it's everywhere. And probably it's going to be more and more in clinical trials and operation. But do you know what is that? What is actually 14 years for you? Any guess? Any idea what is actually 14 years? What does it stand for? 14 years, guys, it's still the average of a clinical trial. So basically, how long basically a clinical trial sells. And somebody, so like Gartner and so on, tell us that AI can improve it. Are we really sure? No, I don't know, frankly speaking. It was not me, basically I was just scouting here and there on the internet, and I found it out something that happened about IBM, and something that it was called Watson, so big fail. And then basically somebody that tried, for example, to merge more than 7 EHR systems, another huge failure. And then AI algorithm that were trying to detect everything but COVID, oh my goodness. So, and everything, the fear rouge behind that is just AI. I'm still a techie, and I'm still actually in love with AI and with innovation. So probably let's try to see a little bit actually what's behind basically this stuff, and why, for example, we are still this kind of disruptive and we still actually have a lot of difficulties about clinical trials. Clinical trials basically currently have a lot of challenges, and the one that, for example, we face in Boehringer are related obviously to efficacy and safety. This is nothing related basically to AI and innovation. It's basically how a drug can really be safe and can be effective, and how many drugs, for example, can drop from phase 2 to phase 3. This is something that is basically a reality. The study design, it's another actually big concern. And why it's a concern? Because I've studied so many protocols, and the study design behind it's so complex, full of inclusion-exclusion criteria. From time to time, maybe too much. Also too much like from the hospitals. We were exactly before discussing about the schedule of activities before during the round table, and some of these were absolutely hard to understand. And obviously clinical trials, we've got actually big issues about recruitment and retention. We need people, we need patients to be on the trials. And first of all, for example, it's hard to recruit, but think about the retention. Think about what's happening like with all the obesity trials and the big drugs that are already on the market. How can we assure that basically our new drugs are gonna be able to still actually recruit basically and retain these patients that are maybe on placebo arm, and they realize that basically they are not losing weight? How can you keep them on that? And then, again, another discussion, a very nice discussion that we had before exactly with you, it's about the burdens that we've got on sites. Clinicians and nurses are doing so many things, and they are understaffed. Basically, they are overwhelmed about all the activities. This is our reality. So basically, we cannot really think that they can really support us 100%. So we have actually to give them as well something to support us about. So, do you really think that we can really transform the status quo of the clinical trials with AI alone? I don't know. Tell me. I mean, do you have any ideas? I mean, this magic that some of us tell us about that. That's a good point. Yeah. I believe that behind that, and you're exactly actually telling me something, we have to have probably a strategy. And the strategy is something that I was scouting here and there, and I found basically this picture that probably actually tell us better. So the strategy behind the possibility to really make actually clinical trials effective, it's not just basically related to AI only, but it's related basically to be linked to a business strategy. So basically, what do you want to achieve with these specific actually clinical trials? And which are the needs and the pain points that we got actually on trials? We have to understand basically the portfolio. So how we basically put this stuff into practice. Which are basically the techniques that could be actually digital techniques, decentralized trials throughout app, but as well actually different ways, for example, to engage sites and patients. And as well also the operating model. And when we talk about operating model, we talk first of all about people. So basically ourselves, our people that are basically on the site, and basically our patients. And then obviously about tech and data. But basically these three things have to work all together. So I really believe that by itself, AI is not going to lead anywhere. So probably the combination of an AI with a support actually of human being, and when is going to probably actually be able to disrupt basically the current status quo of the clinical trials. And when we talk about basically this disruption, let's think about all of us. So basically the ones that are currently working in the trials. And these are our people, so the people that we see every day and so on. And sorry to say that, from time to time, we have really to invest in our people. So there are great vendors outside, but before actually thinking about vendors, let's try to think about how to make actually our people, our talent much better. And then based on that, we're gonna have to empower them in order to make actually the magic new. I don't have any magic or secret recipe about that, but according to my experience and to some of the stuff that I've seen, I see that basically this kind of magic can happen in two ways. Exactly actually merging the human and the AI factors. And the two basically have to go probably in tandem. So on one side, for example, we have to think about the digital part. That is basically the one, the line that is basically in yellow here. And what does it mean according to that? So for example, we have to start with the non-sexy things. And the non-sexy things, guys, are data governance, oh gosh, things that nobody likes. But we have to do it. Why? Because probably you know better than me, if we have, sorry for the word, shit in, we're gonna have shit out, okay? So data first, I'm sorry. And we have to be sure about that. On the second side, also probably not very fancy, but absolutely important, it's the enable basically our people about the literacy basically of this AI. And for us, for example, in Boehringer, it's something absolutely important. We are not talking about just the everyday AI that basically support our operations and so on, Copilot and all these kind of things. But thing that makes actually think a little bit better and a little bit different. We have been started with a big program for our CTM and CTL, so the people that are on the ground, make them understand what is AI. We have actually great collaboration with the Harvard Medical Schools to learn about actually how to put basically AI into everyday and support basically our operation. These kind of things really increase us basically the way in which we learn and so on. If we jump back basically to digital, and think that basically can be defined with digital, we should actually start with the little baby steps. Meaning, let's start not to boil the ocean, but let's start from actually the famous low-hanging fruit in terms of application and operation. So something that could be experimented quite fast and that have no risk. Why? Because it's faster, because it's easier, and especially actually it's gonna please the management. And on this, for example, let's think about, again, regarding clinical trials, what we have been doing, it's use Gen AI to support us in the lay language, basically, protocol generation. Or, for example, in supporting the creation of some protocols, or use agentics to summarize some of the information in the protocols. Or as well, a recent project that I launched about synthetic AI patient personas to help us basically to understand the patient's material. These are very low-hanging fruit that basically tell us how basically we can proceed on. Next, it's something that is absolutely important. So basically, don't let's just actually grow internally and basically set up an important basically aptitude internally, but also basically look externally. And actually it's so funny because we're discussing also with Christian. With Christian we met last year. Christian is from Sanofi and then actually is going to join the stage. And from that time on, for example, we start to talk a lot together, and we've got now a great sort of consortium in which we exchange, we discuss every quarter, and we try to understand on pharma level what's happening. This is great for me because we are learning so much about basically each other and so on. Then, once basically we have done all these kind of things, probably we can jump to most difficult things that are high risk, meaning things that are not so easy to implement, that are probably are going to have a long-term strategy and so on. And these, for example, for clinical trials and operations are about, for example, the in silico patients. Things that, for example, could be inserted in the trials themselves in placebo or not placebo arm, and that could have basically a huge acceleration of the trials. There are still a lot of discussion about FDA and so on, but why not? Let's try. And then the story cannot finish. Obviously, we have to continue and going on about all these things and continues basically to cross-skill and upskill basically our workforce, because AI is moving on fast, and especially we have to have everybody on board. So don't get me wrong, guys. I believe that AI, again, is here to stay. And I believe that the big risk that we have here and the sort of danger that we have about AI is that most of the people conclude too early that they understand what AI comes from. So let's be humble, let's try to understand, and let's move on all together with AI, continues basically having a brain. And with this, I thank you so much, and I open to questions if you have any. Good. The good thing first that basically you're still all awake. That's good. Question, recommendation, request, advice? Yes, please.
Of course, I feel now intimidated and must admit that I don't understand anything.
That's good.
About AI, but looking forward, so 5 years from now, we can assume that the capability of AI, if you look just 3 years back, what has been there and how it's developed now, that it's far beyond what we can now imagine. Can you envision a process where you said 14 years can completely done by AI, and if not, what will be the last part that the human will contribute to that process?
That's a good question, and it's super hard as well. Thank you so much. I'm coming from big tech and so on, and I was at the tables where basically the co-pilot stuff was built. So basically, I was building that stuff. I really believe that, in any case, AI will never substitute and will never totally absorb an entire AI process. Why? Because AI is not perfect, because AI still basically can have bias, but AI still probably need a lot of data and so on. Tomorrow, meaning probably in 10 years, when we're going to have quantum computer, when we're going to have LLM algorithms based on small data and not anymore about big data and so on, probably some of the issues may be solved. But still, the human has to be in the loop. So I would imagine, that's my personal opinion, that for example, some of the authoring process of protocols, so the way, for example, a protocol is written for a specific trials and so on, could be really automated. So probably it's going to be something that is going to be more and more autonomous and more built up according to experience, history, and so on. But at the end, there's going to be still a medical writer behind that is going to have to check and verify if what basically AI is producing is the same. And let me try to make also a very simple example. How many of you are using Copilot to write mails? Okay. How many of you take the outcome of the Copilot and send it over directly? I cannot believe, Christian. No. Well, it's going to be more or less like that. So basically, we probably need still to update and modify it and put our brains in that. So the human has to be in the loop. I see basically the big potential effect on that is that we're going to free up of really boring and probably low value activities And so basically we can, for example, dedicate more time in a most actually exciting activities, or maybe go for a run or actually for a cycle and so on. And so basically cure our mental health. Thank you for the work. Thank you.